Right. Uh, I'm going to give a brief overview of Estonian politics, and this is aimed at foreigners and locals alike. So when usually people comment about politics, they tend to go on and construct all kinds of elaborate theories and make weird predictions. And I'm very skeptical about this kind of thing, especially as concerns predictions. So I'm gonna keep it really brief. So basically, what you have in Estonia, you have a huge opposition party called the Reform Party. The Reform Party used to control every government essentially for the whole of our independence years since 1991, with some exceptions, but they were really a very dominant party. So what happened was that in November of 2016, the Reform Party got ousted from power because the party that was then the main opposition party and now is the main coalition party, called Center Party, managed to overthrow them. So a bit about the background of both parties. So the Reform Party indeed did start as a party of reform in the early 90s. They were instrumental in getting us into the free market system. But starting from a certain point, they became really corrupted by power. They became extremely convinced of their infallibility, and this culminated in a tremendously shocking ouster from the government in November 2016. So essentially, this party became embroiled in some scandals where it was brought to light that they had allegedly gotten some money through illegal means, and they had lots of trouble. Alright, so then the Centre Party created the new government along with the two little allies forward of the Reform Party. So the Centre Party is essentially a party that was created by Edgar Savisaar, our greatest politician, and a guy who's not very high on the empathy scale and was kind of like this Machiavellian character. So Savisaar was also instrumental in getting us free from the Soviet Union, but ever since then, even for him, the decline started a lot before it started for the Reform Party. So he started to sort of become embroiled in more and more shady stuff, and his autocratic tendencies in his own party became so prevalent that he became like the most hated figure in Estonian politics. But the thing that finally destroyed him was this is totally crazy. It was a flesh-eating bacteria. So the guy got the flesh-eating bacteria in his leg. He was in Thailand, if I remember correctly, and they had to amputate his leg. So none of the other politicians could manage to take him down, and none of the prosecutors who tried to pin him down with on several counts of criminal activity. None of them really succeeded. But when his leg was surgically amputated, he was somewhat incapacitated by this, and then swiftly his former allies in the party staged a coup and overtook the party. So the main guy was Jüri Ratas, who is now Prime Minister, and his closest ally was Kadri Simson, who is now the Minister of the Economy. Savisaar, without leg already, was they also then tried to get him on some criminal cases, criminal charges once again. But since his health has degenerated to such a astounding degree, it was finally decided that further participation in this lengthy court process might actually kill him, and so he was sort of acquitted. So he's in a sense neither guilty nor innocent. He was just dropped because he's too ill. Alright, anyway, so the Centre Party under Savisaar mainly devoted their energies to courting our Russian minority, which can be called a minority only in quotation marks because they are a very large percentage of our population. I'm not exactly sure, but in the main capital Tallinn where I live, it's like close to 50-50. And so these are all people who were imported here during the Soviet times, mainly as sort of blue-collar workers. Special parts of Tallinn were constructed for them. Huge apartment blocks going on for miles and miles, and now they live there, and they're extremely alienated from Estonian society. So just to give some background, we have an insane society in a sense because we have a minority that is almost equal in number to our native population, but this minority essentially lives in a parallel world. So they have much lower, everything for them is much lower, like income status, representation, in a sense that everything official is in Estonian. So these people exist like parallel to us, and in 2008 we had a near civil war situation when our idiotic prime minister at the time in the Reform Party, called Andrus Ansip, who is now in the European Commission, he's a commissioner or whatever, he's high up in the European hierarchy. Anyway, this guy tried to remove the main sort of psychologically important monument for the Russians, which is called the Bronze Soldier, where they used to go on pilgrimages basically to honor those fallen in the Second World War. So for them it was like an anti-fascist symbol of the fallen brave Russian soldiers in the Second World War. But for the Estonian locals it was like, oh, it's a symbol of occupation. So yeah, it kind of is, but it can't fuck with things like this. So our idiot prime minister tried, he actually removed it under the cover of night, and then the Russians started looting many of them, of course, not all of them, and we had really the mass arrests, and it was a very, very, very tense situation. So, but anyway, the Center Party has always represented the interests of these Russians who have like no other voice. And for this reason, they in our local propaganda, they're being presented as the party of Putin or whatever, bollocks like this. So what happened after Savisaar got his leg, unfortunately lost his leg and lost power, was that his former henchmen, henchwomen, tried to rebrand the party as no longer a party of just the working class and the more Russians, but more of a really like a centrist party, and inevitably more of a right-wing, in an economic sense, party. So they largely were successful in this. The holdouts in the party, supporters of Savisaar, were eventually subdued, by various means, and they were sort of integrated into the party structure. So Yana Toom, who is a female, half Russian, half Estonian journalist and member of parliament now, was extremely popular, and is extremely popular with the Russian segment of the electorate who votes for the Center Party. And she actually threatened to leave at some point, but eventually acquiesced and stayed. So, So anyway, the coalition that was formed in 2016 consisted of the Center Party and then the it's a convoluted name, the Union of the Fatherland and Patria. So basically what this means, we had a party, a nationalist center-right economically party called the Union of the Fatherland, basically. So all these names sound like ridiculously fascist in English, but they're not in Estonian considered fascist. So it was called the Union of the Fatherland, and then at some point we got another party that was called Respublica, which means in Latin for the people, and then at some point they joined forces, and now this was called the Union of Fatherland and Respublica. Yeah, no, and by by now they've gone back again to just fatherland. So now they're not even the party of the fatherland or the union of the fatherland, they're just fatherland. So yeah, sorry, it sounds a bit fascist, but really isn't. Now in this party, and then they had the Social Democrats. So you got a sort of nominally center-right and nominally center-left, two tiny parties. And one is more, socially conservative, and the other is extremely socially liberal. Now, this is all very nice, but you have another party, which is called Estonian Conservative People's Party, which is essentially our version of Trump. So this party is sort of like a hard line. The rhetoric is, down with the immigrants, down with the gays, quite to an extent that if you think Trump's rhetoric was bad during the campaign, you should listen to these guys. They're much worse. The one guy in the leadership coined the term "kui on must, näita ust," which means in English, if it's black, show it the door. It's just like tremendously, insanely racist, and even I think Trump would have been, he couldn't have been elected if he had used language like this. But since we have been occupied by the Soviets, and we have a very large formerly immigrant, now considered native population of Russians, we're not exactly politically correct around here. So the funny thing is that these old sort of patriot guys in the Fatherland party, they really during the course of time, drifted into the nomenclature and became like a very, average European liberal party. So they sort of lost their niche, and this is now clearly reflected in the new polling results also, because this new nationalist party is like the number 3 party now, after the two big ones. Like the Reform Party in opposition has a huge popularity, Center Party is a bit less, and then the third one is this like nationalist party. So we have our elections in March, and they will almost certainly become, get be third in the amount of votes, and I can foresee them being in government, which would be a very good thing, because they represent people in Estonia who lack a representation. So, but until then, we will have, if they manage to stick together, this funny little coalition of the Center Party, the Social Democrats, and the old guard Patriots. Now, the Social Democrat Party is really funny because their leader is Evgeny Ossinovsky, who I've talked about in a previous video. And Ossinovsky has all but managed to destroy the party, tanking its popularity from something like 15 or 17% to somewhere like 5, I guess. So he has essentially single-handedly, with his idiotic policies, destroyed this party. But he is not still being ousted, although there are attempts being done quite openly to oust him and to sort of rid themselves of him. So we'll see what happens, but I think that the Social Democrats will do extremely badly in the upcoming elections. They will be lucky if they manage to cross the 5% line, which is the line below which you get no representation in parliament. The old guard, the Fatherland Party, is similarly quite fucked. They don't really have any fresh faces too, so they will also be struggling to get over the sort of the poverty line. Then you have a funny little sort of party called the Free Party, essentially. So this is a party that sort of had this populist agenda, not so much against immigrants or against gay marriage or stuff like this, but more like pro decentralization and giving us more populism, standing for the little guy against all commands coming from the European Union and so forth and so on. But they have a charismatic guy called Arto Talvik, a former theater guy, Astor Helms person or helmsman, but they're sort of like a pointless party. I mean, yeah, they, you can only lament corruption and non-democratic practices for so long. You have to have some real program, but they sort of lack a real program, and they're sort of like too soft to be a party, really. So they will probably also tank and be melded with the new nationalist party, I think. And also elements from the old Fatherland party will also melt with this merge with this newer party, I think. So in a sense, what you have is like three types of parties. If we think the Social Democrats, who are liberal, will also probably merge to a great extent with the Reform Party, who is also liberal. So you have a sort of right-wing, quite liberal and pro-EU party, the Reform Party. Then you have a sort of Eurosceptic, more kinda, sorta, but fundamentally center party that represents the interests of our Russian minority. And then you have this strong sort of populist national party, which is they have some views that I like very much, like decentralization, more national sovereignty, because the EU is not serving us well anymore. So you're gonna have an interesting thing playing out. Three quite large parties. We also always used to have like two large parties and then all the little ones. You have like three parties that are quite large. You can have like more interesting coalition situations going on. So the only two parties that are really like total opposed are Ossinovski's Social Democrats and this new it's called EKRE, Estonian Conservative People's Party. So they are like playing off of each other, trying to like gain votes by opposing each other, essentially. And for this EKRE it worked well, but for Social Democrats, since they've done all these other stupid things, it hasn't really worked out. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting, and we have already in March our elections, and who the hell knows what's gonna happen with like economically, with the tax system and stuff like that. So I'll have a lot of work to do and stuff to write about to put the bread on the table. So yeah, what we don't have in Estonia is this sort of huge support for populist parties that you have like in the US you had for Trump, or even for like Le Pen, or I don't know how much Alternative für Deutschland has votes, but the thing is that Estonians are really, really, really conservative, and not like in a sense conservative that we want stability, because we've suffered through so much horrible stuff that people don't like. They might like say they like radical ideas, but when they go to the ballot box, they really want stability. So the Reform Party has always won because it offered stability, and now it had to be really discredited in the media and in the public sphere to for even the momentum for the other parties to oust it. But it hasn't yet been tested in elections. And now it's the most popular party right now. So who knows? So what I think actually what will happen is the Reform Party will form the government either with the Centre Party or with this EKRE, and they will pick some little ones maybe to just get over the 50% in the parliament. But it's more like that they will cooperate with the Centre Party because they know each other better, and they're basically both establishment parties. And we had governments of these two big ones before, so we will see. But the existence of this large third party will certainly make things more interesting and, in my opinion, more democratic. That's about all. Thanks very much.